We're talking about urinary incontinence in dogs. In this Vet Minute, Revival's Director of Veterinary Services, Dr. Marty Greer, talks about what to do if your dog is incontinent. First, let's discuss dog incontinence causes. If your dog is leaking urine, what is causing that?
Well, if it's a very young puppy that never had good bladder control, that can potentially be a serious condition called an ectopic ureter. That requires veterinary intervention as soon as you recognize the problem. For most dogs, they go through periods when they're very young of not being particularly well housebroken, but they can hold their urine. They just don't hold it for as long as we like. So those are the 7-minute dogs, the ones that need to go outside every 7 minutes to go potty. So that's pretty common. That's not incontinence. That's a housebreaking and a development issue in a young puppy. But after the dogs become housebroken and reliable, most dogs should be able to hold their bladder control very well. And urinary incontinence is primarily a problem in the female dog, not as often in male dogs that are neutered, but most often in female dogs 1 to 2 years after they're spayed. And there's actually a term for it, spay incontinence.
Now, if your dog is leaking urine all of a sudden, you'll want to do some sort of treatment, probably. Let's start with dog urinary incontinence natural remedies. What do you suggest?
Sure. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of things that we can do. We can certainly fall back on the Doc Roy's potassium citrate and cranberry to see if that gives us some improvement. But if it doesn't, then we do need to seek veterinary care. Dogs that were pretty well housebroken and then suddenly become incontinent may very well have a bladder infection, in which case you want to have the dog evaluated by a veterinarian, preferably with ultrasound or x-ray to look for stones, to look for tumors, and to look for an infection. If the infection is found, of course, we're going to proceed with treatment at that point. If no infection is found, then we're going to be looking at a drug like Urine, which is a prescription item that helps. It's an estrogen supplement that helps with spay incontinence in the older female dog that has been spayed and at one time was well housebroken, but then starts to lose her bladder control.
Okay, so if your dog is leaking urine, when should you take him to the vet? How long should you wait before you make that appointment?
You shouldn't wait too long because it's going to cause problems in your house, your carpet, your bed. It's going to start to become smelly and messy, and it's not something that you want to wait on. And unfortunately, the literature reports that up to 20% of spayed female dogs will develop incontinence. I personally think that it's higher. It's up to 80% in boxers, but I personally think it's higher. And I think a lot of people are embarrassed to talk to their veterinarian about this, so they just put them in little diapers or they change the bedding frequently. And they just don't complain about it because they assume that that's just a normal aging change. But in reality, it's not. Veterinarians can help you a lot with this particular condition.
That's good to know. And as you kind of touched on earlier, like obviously the age of the animal is important to consider in this situation, a 4-month-old puppy leaking urine versus old dog incontinence. What is the difference when it comes to like that old dog incontinence?
Right. And that again gets back to the fact that her hormones are gone. She's just no longer has the muscle control. So it's different than a puppy that doesn't really have the ability to communicate and control their bladder well until you get to the door versus a dog that's laying down, resting, sleeping, and then you wake up in a puddle of urine or she wakes up in a puddle of urine. So just be aware that it's pretty common. It's not something to be embarrassed about. And it is something that your veterinarian can help you with a prescription medication.
Hi, if you're watching on YouTube, consider subscribing to the Revival Animal Health YouTube channel. If you have a pet health question, call our pet care pros at this number. And don't miss our other pet health videos.